On February 10th, 2023, developers Avalanche Software and publishers Warner Brothers Games released the video game Hogwarts Legacy for the current-gen consoles and Windows PCs. And there was much rejoicing among Potterheads, fans of the uber-popular Harry Potter fantasy series written by J.K. Rowling about a boy wizard chosen one destined to defeat the Dark Lord Voldemort through cunning, bravery, and love. Yes, love, don't forget love, the strongest force in the Harry Potter universe capable of deflecting even the unforgivable killing curse. Remember that, JK? Remember when you wrote that into your own books, JK? I remember, JK. I remember reading your books, JK. Unfortunately for us, it appears that love being the strongest force in the universe capable of deflecting even the most unforgivable act of cruelty and hate is just a fantasy indeed. After years of posting transphobic, hate-fueled rhetoric online from the comfort of her multi-million-dollar home, some Potter fans have gotten mighty sick of Rowling and her wizarding world. Some advocated that gamers boycott Hogwarts Legacy to send Rowling the message that her transphobia is not tolerated. Some advocated for the boycott because to experience the game would tacitly, even if unintentionally, support Rowling's transphobia. And some even took it upon themselves to harass any Twitch streamers who dared to live stream the game, leading to at least one streamer holding back tears at the harassment.
I'm almost like thinking of just like either going offline or like I'm barely into the second combat here, and every time I look at chat, it's just the conversation is just like
maybe we can do like
bothering me.
Be right back, like a little break or something.
You can take a break if you want. I'll just stop talking and I'll just go fight and do the combat. Y'all done did it now.
But this isn't a video about whether J.K. Rowling is transphobic. She is. Nor is it about whether there's anything wrong with being transphobic. There is. This isn't even about whether bullying is ever justified. It's not. Or, wait, is it ever justified? Let's pretend for a second that not playing Hogwarts Legacy was the morally right thing to do. Look at me. Look at me, I'm pretending. Let's pretend that not playing the game was the right thing to do. Was it then right for people to bully others in an attempt to make them do the right thing? What if you bully someone for the greater good?
The greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.
Greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
Shut it!
Do the ends justify the means? Are results all that matter? Should every decision come down to a calculation of the benefits versus harms caused? Will I keep asking rhetorical questions or finally get to the point of this video? Is this the last question? Is this the last question? Is this the last question? Sorry about that. This video is about the first fallacy of modern society. But before I can explain what I mean by that, we need to talk about a big fancy word. A big fancy schmancy word. A big fancy schmancy anti-pansy. We need to talk about When Thanos decided to snap away half of all life in Infinity War, he made a calculation. Killing half the universe is obviously a monstrous thing. Not only does it harm the people actually snapped away, but also the people who stay behind as they mourn the loss of their friends and family and co-workers who they sort of liked but not liked enough to spend off-work hours yapping away with them about their dead fish or stinky child or whatever boring thing happened on that week's episode of NCIS Los Angeles. But the harms caused by the snap are far outweighed by the benefits, Thanos reasoned. He saw the universe as overpopulated and resource limited. People of all races and creeds across the universe constantly fought and killed over the meager resources available. Snapping away half of all life would not only free up resources for those who remain, but also provide for many generations to come. To Thanos, the ends justified the means. He ran the calculations and the results told him he should harm a few to benefit the many. He made an ends-based analysis of the right course of action to take. The consequences, the actual results, were all that mattered to him. Thanos then followed the ethical framework of utilitarianism. Now that's a big word. A big fancy word. A big fancy schmancy... No, I've got it in control, I promise. We don't need to get into the nitty-gritty of the word itself. All you need to know for this discussion is that utilitarianism says, in all cases, the best course of action is the one which maximizes the most utility for the most people. We can even make it simpler than that. The best action is always the one which benefits the most people the greatest amount. Whenever you're stuck deciding what to do, just run the numbers. How many people would you harm? Would you harm them a little bit or a lot? How many people would you benefit? Would you benefit them a little or a lot? Add the numbers, subtract, get the square root, just kidding, you don't need to do that last part, and see if your actions will produce the most harm or the most benefits. Even if your action causes some harms, if it ultimately results in more benefits, then go ahead and do it. You've got the utilitarianism seal of approval. Woo, yeah! But if your action would cause more harms than benefits, then no. The action is no good, Buster. Boo! Makes sense so far? Here's another example to help. In 2013's Man of Steel, when General Zod said, "I will find him."
I will find him!
No, wait, wrong quote. When he said,
If you love these people so much, you can mourn for them. Never.
a calculation ran through Clark's mind, even if maybe he didn't think of it in those terms. Kill one to save an entire planet? Now, I know what you're all gonna say right now. I can already hear your fingers typing away. Superman doesn't kill, he should have done this, or he should have done that to solve the Zod situation without killing anybody. But put aside whether you think this moment makes Man of Steel a bad Superman movie. Given the way the story is set up, Clark is faced with an ethical dilemma, a true ethical dilemma. And the thing about dilemmas is, you can't get away from them. He's up against an enemy who's just as powerful as he is, just as capable of defeating him as he is of defeating them, but with vastly more combat experience.
I was bred to be a warrior, Cal. Trained my entire life to master my senses. Where did you train? On a farm?
And Zod has just said in no uncertain terms that this will end with either Clark killing him or Zod killing everyone on Earth. Despite whatever psychological or emotional harm the action would cause Clark, and as it turns out, there's not much of a harm to him anyway, other than a few minutes of him looking sad, and then he gets to kiss his love interest. Yes, I know, this movie's not very good. And despite killing Zod obviously harming Zod, the most benefit is produced for the most people if Clark snaps Zod's neck and prevents him from killing everyone on Earth. Whatever you might think about the merits of a Superman story where he's forced to kill, I think you could make an interesting narrative out of how this one act of murder for the greater good
The greater good.
Greater good.
affects Clark emotionally, intellectually, ethically. In the sober light of day, does Clark think he did the right thing? Would he do it again if given the chance? Was there perhaps more at stake in his decision to kill Zod than just the end result of his action? Yet in what's emblematic of the topic of this video, Zack, Snyder, and David R. Scoyer weren't interested in exploring any of that. Clark's action is portrayed as the right one by the movie, and then the story moves on. In the Injustice Gods Among Us video game and comic book series, coincidentally also released in the same year as Man of Steel, Superman kills the Joker and keeps on killing using the same utilitarian calculation that the harms he is causing are far outweighed by the lives he is saving. But the most that series does to counter Superman's justification for his actions is to argue that once Superman started to kill, he never knew when to stop, until even his friends and other innocent people were no longer safe. His problem then was not necessarily his steadfast pursuit of ends, but that the more he pursued his desired ends, the more harms he had to cause in order to achieve them, until it wasn't clear anymore whether he was causing more harms or more goods. And finally, for months after Infinity War came out, the biggest criticism you will read online about Thanos' action was that he ran his numbers wrong. Instead of killing half of all life in the universe, he should have just doubled the resources in the universe. Or maybe half the amount of resources every living being needs in order to survive. There were so many better means with which Thanos could have achieved his desired end of striking a balance between living beings and resources. He just chose the one which caused the most harms, like making fan favorite Peter Parker not feel so good. Whoopsie! Thanos did math wrong.
I did math bad.
I use math for evil.
Ends-based, utilitarian-like moral calculations are everywhere in pop culture, but they're seldom fully explored, and if they are, then they're explored through the same ends-based lenses. What's worse, ends-based arguments are also used to justify actions in real life all the time without stopping to consider if maybe there are other non-ends-based frameworks with which we can judge actions. The first fallacy of modern society, then, is the over-reliance on ends-based arguments to justify actions when there are more things with value than just ends. In other words, Utilitarianism and theories like it aren't the only framework with which we can judge the ethics of actions, despite what modern society might lead you to believe. This is a topic of discussion for this bit. Wait a minute, how long are we into this video? And I'm just starting my thesis now? Jeez. Talk about burying the lead. I buried it, dumped a lake on top of it, then crashed a meteor into the lake. Whew! Whee! I promise we'll get back to Hogwarts Legacy soon. But before that, you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, what's so bad about utilitarianism anyway? I mean, sure, killing is generally wrong, but when Superman punches a hole in the Joker's stomach, he's doing society a favor. Supervillains are serial killers. Serial killers! The Joker has just nuked Metropolis and killed Lois Lane while she was pregnant with Soup's child. I mean, what's wrong with getting rid of scum like that? And sure, killing is generally wrong, but Clark really has no choice at that moment with Zod. Snapping his neck is an evil, sure. And generally, superheroes don't commit evil, sure, but it's the lesser evil. Better to kill one man than let that man kill an entire planet. And Thanos? Well, his problem wasn't that he ran a moral calculation in his head, his problem was that he was an idiot. The Mad Titan, he generally just did his math wrong, did klutz. All that matters are the end results. If the end results are good, if you're benefiting more people than you're harming, then you're doing good. I just don't see how benefiting actual people aren't the most important things to consider when choosing how to act in this world. Well, my mustachioed friend, consider this. Say Dr. Strange hasn't had his accident yet and is still that arrogant surgeon working in that hospital. He has 5 patients who are terminally ill and desperately need organ transplants to live. They're good people, fine people. They just need a heart, a lung, a kidney, a liver, and another kidney within the next couple of hours to live and continue to be good people. But unless they get these transplants within the next hour, they will all die. All of them. Very sad. Now, Strange is walking around the hospital looking for excuses to show off his brilliance when he hears about a homeless man who was just brought into the hospital. He's unconscious, he's suffering from a drug overdose, but all he needs is an injection of the drug naloxone and he'll be okay. Well, at least for a little while the naloxone wears off, then he'll need more doses until the opioid is gone from his system. The hospital staff give him the naloxone, he's put in a recovery room for monitoring, then left alone. Strange, meanwhile, examines the homeless man, sees that he's in an otherwise perfect shape, healthy as a nubile baby. And what's more, he's a donor match for all 5 of Strange's patients. What good luck! He even has ID that it says he's a registered organ donor. Even more unbelievable luck! All Strange needs to do is prevent anyone from giving the man a second dose of naloxone when the first one wears off. Let him die from his overdose. Then he can use his organs to save those 5 good, very good, fine people. Harm one life to benefit 5 others? That's a no-brainer, Strange thinks, and off he goes to enact his brilliant plan. Anything wrong with that picture? Say the situation is slightly different. This time, Strange sees a homeless man come into the free clinic complaining about a pain in his ankle. Strange insults the clinic doctor and gets him to leave so he can examine the homeless man himself. Again, the man is perfectly healthy, he just has a sprained ankle, and he's a perfect match for all 5 of Strange's terminally ill patients. All Strange needs to do is stab the homeless man in the neck with a scalpel, killing him, then harvest his organs to save the 5 other good, incredibly good people in desperate need. Sure, the homeless man was also a good person, he had just fallen on hard times. But harm one good person to benefit 5 other equally good people? The math doesn't lie. Strange would bring the most benefit to the most people if he would just kill this one innocent man. Still unconvinced? Here, have a third scenario. This one's quick. This time, Superman answers a call for help from an entire neighborhood. Yes, an entire neighborhood. See, the people in this neighborhood live good, honest lives, helping others as much as they can, providing for their own families as best they can. They just want to live their lives in peace. Only, this black family has just moved right into their neighborhood, and those already there are bone-deep racists. I mean bone-deep racists. Even the thought of a black family living among them causes the people of this neighborhood excruciating mental pain, which often even manifests itself in physical pain. They want Superman to simply pick up the black family and all their belongings and drop them off somewhere else. They don't care where, just as long as it's out of sight. Just as long as it prevents this black family from living among them. Easy, simple. Harm a mother and father and the 12-year-old girl to greatly benefit an entire neighborhood? The calculation runs itself. Should Superman do it? Don't answer that, you racists. No, obviously Superman shouldn't do it. And neither should Strange kill or otherwise let the homeless man die in order to save his 5 other patients. There's just something wrong with applying the utilitarian, ends-based approach to these scenarios. Now, you might think some of these scenarios are worse than the other ones, but crucially, they're all operating under the same framework that the value of actions lies solely in their end results. And they're all worse for it, because there isn't value just in ends. The result is not all that matters. There are a whole host of competitors to utilitarianism and similar ends-based theories for judging actions. Here I want to briefly introduce 2 main ones, and we can more fully explore them in future videos. One class of competitors to ends-based theories are theories of virtue ethics. The most famous example of such a theory comes from the Greek philosopher Aristotle. These theories ascribe value to being a virtuous person, of having a good character. In any given situation, the right action is the one which a virtuous person would do, regardless of whether that action actually produces any positive results. There is value in being the kind of person who doesn't kill or otherwise let a homeless man die so their organs could be harvested, even if they would be harvested in order to save other people. There is value in being the kind of person who helps the homeless man dying from a drug overdose, even if the man then goes out and overdoses again the next night and this time dies from it well after the 5 other terminally ill patients who could have used his organs have already passed away themselves. There is value in being the kind of person who doesn't forcibly relocate a black family to make the racists in their neighborhood feel better, even if this perhaps then results in the racists taking matters into their own hands and shooting the black family dead when no one is looking. To be clear, if you can somehow prevent these grisly ends while still acting as a virtuous person would, then you should. The point is merely that there is also value to being a certain kind of person, and the value of your character is not diminished by these grisly ends. The very best Superman stories are the ones where he is the ultimate virtuous person. Never cruel nor cowardly, wait, that's Doctor Who. Never vengeful, never uncaring, never anything less than the very best of humanity. A role model that every other being, super or merely ordinary, looks up to as a beacon of light to guide the path through stormy moral seas. The personification of truth, justice, and the American way. Like when the American way was something to aspire to. What would Jesus do? That's another one. If only people actually did what Jesus would do, instead of just saying that and acting wholly un-Jesus-like. The second class of competitors to ends-based theories are called deontological theories, another big word. But all it means is rules-based, or duty-based if you want to get really technical. In these types of theories, actions themselves have values that derive from some rule or duty, and these values don't change regardless of what end results the actions may or may not cause. Killing is wrong, always, everywhere, for any reason, a deontologist would say, regardless of how much benefit to how many people you would bring about by doing it. That is a moral rule, and you have a duty never to break it. Now, the source of these rules or duties are different in different deontological theories. A very complicated version comes from Immanuel Kant, and yes, it's pronounced Immanuel Kant. Kant. Don't demonetize me, YouTube. Joke's on you, YouTube. This channel's not even eligible for monetization. Yet. But oh dear, if I ever end up doing a video on the old boy Kant. A simple version of deontology would be the 10 Commandments, where the rules just come from God. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. And so on and so forth, God says. Doesn't matter how good it feels to covet her. Doesn't matter if your neighbor never finds out about the coveting. Doesn't matter how skilled she is with her tongue and your little wee-wee. Thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not. But for this video, let's consider a different kind of deontology. A version which finds the values of actions in other valuable things in the world that those actions would reasonably impact by virtue of being those kinds of actions. Killing is wrong, for example, because it is the kind of action that aims to forcibly take away life, and life itself has value. Truth has value, so lying is wrong because it is the kind of action which aims to diminish the truth. The freedom from racism has value, so any action that, whether intentionally or not, increases racism is wrong. Notice that the value of the action is not found in the end result itself. Regardless of whether you actually manage to kill or lie or increase racism in the world, the very acts themselves which would reasonably lead to such outcomes are wrong. And I'll leave it for you as homework as to what this version of deontology would say about the Superman and Doctor Strange scenarios I described before. Now, pay attention to what I'm about to say because it's very important.
Class, be quiet and pay attention.
The point I'm trying to make in this video is not that utilitarianism is always wrong and that one of these other types of theories is always right. If you have a choice between two evils, and those are your only two choices, then choosing the lesser evil is still choosing the lesser evil. You're choosing evil, but you're choosing for less evil to happen. Isn't that the better outcome? Plus, what good is acting virtuously if a supervillain has created a dastardly machine that makes certain every virtuous actions you do result in bad outcomes? Stop stroking your own ego and acting so virtuously, you're only making bad things happen. And sure, we can say killing is always wrong, until by not killing Hitler you doom millions of people to horrible suffering. Just
Do it! Just
maybe one of these theories is fundamentally correct. We just have to figure out the right way to pitch it. Or maybe each theory applies to some scenarios but not others. And the right approach is to figure out how we can pick and choose between the theories in the right way. The debate between these two approaches is as old as time, and I wouldn't have any hopes of settling it in this video even if I wanted to try. My only point in this video is that there are multiple frameworks for judging actions. That end results aren't the only things with value. That not every situation calls for a cold calculation of harms versus benefits. Which makes it so frustrating when people in real life just keep relying on ends-based arguments to justify their actions. Yes, that's right, it's finally time. Time to go back to the Matrix. Back to... Gamers should boycott Hogwarts Legacy so they don't support J.K. Rowling's transphobia. By playing the game on stream, you're also advertising it to your audience who then are more likely to play the game themselves. So, to make sure the boycott is successful and as few people as possible play the game, I should harass any streamer I see playing it. Something like this probably ran through the minds of those who took it upon themselves to bully anyone they saw streaming the game. The only thing of value was the end result that the game was played by the fewest possible number of people. And so, they reasoned that they were justified in harassing streamers in order to bring about this valuable end. They would harm a few streamers to benefit society at large. Meanwhile, at least some of the streamers who play the game on their streams had a different calculation run through their heads. They reasoned that many people were curious about the game, but were unsure whether they wanted to support Rowling by buying the game themselves. If they were to watch the streamer play the game, then they would satisfy their curiosity without succumbing to the urge of buying it. This would reduce the number of people who would otherwise buy the game and, whether intentionally or not, end up supporting J.K. Rowling's transphobia. Maybe, by tacitly promoting the game on the streams, they would harm a few people, namely any trans folks in their audience who wouldn't want to see the game promoted in that way, but if it meant less people actually buying the game, then that would be an overall win. Then there were the gamers who thought it was entirely silly to even think about boycotting the game. Hogwarts Legacy was developed by Avalanche Software and published by Warner Brothers Games. The people who worked at those companies would be the main beneficiaries of the sales of the game. Rowling would get a small percentage of the profits, or if she was paid a lump sum for the use of the Harry Potter IP before Avalanche even got started, then she was already paid and boycotting the game would not matter one bit to her bottom line. And besides, you're only one person, how much would you really be supporting Rowling by buying the game? Millions of other people are already going to buy it. Your singular boycott wouldn't make a dent in the final numbers. The only thing you would be accomplishing by boycotting the game would be depriving yourself the pleasures of playing the game yourself and living out your wizarding world of Harry Potter fantasy. The numbers just don't add up. By not buying the game, you will be harming yourself and the developers of the game way more than you will be harming Rowling in any shape or form. So go ahead and buy it and play it and love it and sleep soundly at night knowing you didn't do anything wrong. Now, the point of this video isn't to declare whether there was anything wrong with playing Hogwarts Legacy. I know, you're gonna say that's a cop-out. But that discussion is big and complex, involving the separation of art from artists and the possible impossibility of ethical consumption under capitalism. And then there's the distance between Rowling herself and the production of this specific work of art based on her IP, and how much are you really promoting and or supporting Rowling's transphobia by merely playing the game. There's a lot to unpack and this video isn't equipped to handle that discussion. My focus in this video is a broader one when it comes to the reaction towards Hogwarts Legacy. Namely that when considering whether to play it or not, we have more angles to consider than just the end results of that action. More frameworks apply to the examination of whether or not to play it than just an ends-based utilitarian-like framework. Ends do have value, of course. Supporting video games is good. Supporting transphobes is not good. Supporting the trans folk in your audience is good. Harassing and bullying people is not good. But it's not just a matter of listing all the people harmed and benefited by the action, then running the calculation to see which side fares the best. There's also something to be said about being the kind of person who doesn't use or promote products which benefit transphobes or bigots of any kind, no matter how small or how insignificant that benefit might be. That the very act of purchasing the game and playing it has a negative value in and of itself, regardless of whether anyone finds out about it or whether your singular act makes a dent in the millions of other people doing it anyway. In short, one could make the argument that it's wrong to play Hogwarts Legacy even if no one sees you do it and even if everyone else is playing it anyway, because doing so supports a known, very vocal transphobe, even if unintentionally, and it is wrong to support transphobes, even if unintentionally. You should not be the kind of person who supports transphobes or bigots of any kind, even if unintentionally. And just to be clear, the same sort of argument can be made against bullying streamers who live stream the game. The streamers are people with values in themselves, and that any harms caused to them cannot be reduced by any benefits accrued by any others, even if it would be for the greater good. Now again, I'm not here assessing the validity or soundness of this argument against playing Hogwarts Legacy. Maybe there's nothing wrong at all about buying and playing and thereby tacitly promoting the game based on the IP of a well-known transphobe. Is it okay to be the kind of person who consumes media that supports, whether financially or just mindshare-wise, a known bigot and transphobe? Is there anything wrong with the action itself of purchasing the game with the intent to play it, regardless of whether you actually play it or if anyone ever finds out that you played it? These are important questions to ask and seek answers to. They should be explored, and their answers cannot be found by playing a numbers game. The solution is not to run a calculation. Okay, you might now say, is that it? That's all you have to say? Took all that time just to say there's more to judging actions than just their end results? Why dedicate a whole video just to make that point? Because it is a fallacy of modern society to constantly make ends-based arguments to justify actions when there are more things to value than just ends. The Hogwarts Legacy case is just one example. I have more! Binders and binders of more! Voting. Whether or not I vote doesn't matter because one vote won't end up making the difference in the election. So I'm not gonna bother. I'm not gonna engage in politics at all. I'm just gonna let whatever happens happen. Because realistically, my single vote won't make a difference to the end result anyway. Our initial instinct here might be to respond with, no, a single vote could make the difference between one candidate winning or losing an election. It's a winner-takes-all scenario. A single vote could end up being the difference. But we need to resist this instinct because they can always respond back, yeah, but the chances of that are really slim. Realistically, it's not gonna happen. Chances are my one vote would still end up being ineffective, baby. We're playing right into their hands by still operating under the framework that only the end result has value, and since the end result is unlikely to come down to a single vote, since the math is still in their favor, they can safely ignore their civic duty and then later complain about how other people didn't vote the same way they would have if they had voted. Now, maybe we could say if everyone thought that their one vote didn't matter and so didn't end up voting, the chances that a single vote would make the difference would go up. So they should vote to avoid the candidate they don't like from winning by single vote. But we can't even use this argument to convince my mustachioed friend to vote in the election because you're saying if I vote it'll make it less likely that a single vote would make the difference? I'm still not saying why I should bother then, since if I vote it'll be less likely that I'll make the difference. Besides, I can't control what others will do, so even if you convince me to vote, you also have to convince millions of other people to vote, which, even if you somehow manage to do, would in turn make my one vote less likely to be the decisive vote, giving me less of an incentive to cast my vote, and similarly for the millions of others you would have to convince with the same argument. And oh no, I've gone cross-eyed. The solution to the disillusioned voters' math isn't to pile on more different math. It's to recognize that not everything comes down to calculation, that we don't only have ends-based arguments to work with. We need to recognize that there is value in the act of voting itself, regardless of whether that act would ultimately determine the outcome of an election, because every single vote is an expression of the electorate. We need to recognize that there is value in being the kind of person who takes the time and makes the effort to engage in the democratic process that they have the privilege of having access to. That voting is not just an ends-based exercise, but a civic duty, and duties are to be done whether you like them or not, whether they're easy or hard. And if you're unhappy with the candidates on the ballot at your top-level elections, Then spend time engaging at the grassroots level, which, over time, will end up shaping your top-level political landscape. So, my mustachioed friend, your single vote isn't just one drop of water in an ocean. It has value in and of itself by virtue of being your vote. Huh. And ironically, if people focus less on the end results of voting and more on voting as a civic duty, then the desired end results would follow in time. But crucially, that's not the reason to vote. That's just a happy consequence of performing your civic duty. Now, I don't want to imply that ends-based thinking has no value in elections. It's a complex subject. For example, when you have no choice but to choose between a preset list of candidates, isn't there value in voting for the lesser evil, even if you would rather not vote for any evil at all? Or is voting for any kind of evil always itself an evil and should be rejected as an option? But then inaction is still inaction, and similarly not voting for anyone might, in some circumstances, be the same as voting for the greater evil. Excuse me while I uncross my eyes again. Plastics. It's impossible for me to remove every single plastic and other petroleum-based product from my life. The stuff is everywhere, and some things are just way more convenient or cheaper when they're made from fossil fuels. And besides, I'm just one person. Even if I somehow managed to reduce all my fossil fuel usage to zero, it wouldn't make a difference to climate change. I can't be perfect. And if I was, not everyone else is going to be perfect. So there's no point in doing any reduction of my fossil fuel usage. My desired end of reversing climate change is not realistically reachable, so I'm not gonna bother doing anything that even points that direction. Rip that mustache off, friend. Each act of reduction is in itself valuable, even if by itself it might not make a meaningful difference to climate change. And there is also value in being the kind of person who tries to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels in whatever ways they can, even if you can't escape fossil fuels entirely in every aspect of your life. Any reduction is still an act of reduction, and all acts of reduction are good. Remember, you don't have to be perfect to do good, you just have to do good. And whether or not the desired ends are achievable, the right means to those ends are still valuable in themselves. Once again, imagine if everyone thought of it in these non-end-based terms. Suddenly, the actions done, regardless of whether the desired ends would come, would end up bringing about a lot of those desired ends anyway. Vaccines. One person won't make the difference in establishing herd immunity within the community, so it doesn't matter if I get the vaccine that's been proven to protect against this deadly disease that has started a global pandemic. There is value in being the kind of person who cares about those in your community who cannot get the vaccine because of underlying medical conditions, and so receives the vaccine not just to protect themselves from the deadly disease, but also their neighbors, even if they, by themselves, cannot establish herd immunity through receiving the vaccine. These heralds of singularity, these saviors of humanity, these generative AI products we've made which enable paying customers to spend our worthless junk and scam people out of their money and completely pollute online information with a deluge of disinformation like a sewage pipe feeding directly into the city's drinking water could not have been weighed for the— Oh! Seriously? This is the best argument to come up with? I mean, the real reason is money. Clearly it's all about money. But all of these companies who made generative AI products seriously try to argue that the ends of creating these fake artificial intelligence products justified the means of stealing millions of work from authors and artists and even just regular people online trying to talk to their friends. That because their work is supposedly important and was okay? No. Crucial for them to exploit all sorts of people without any consequences? Even if they had managed to create an actual artificial intelligence, they didn't. Or even if their fake artificial intelligence, or FAI, really was incredibly useful to all of humanity, it isn't. There is still value in not stealing from people to create such a product. There is value in respecting and supporting and fairly compensating the artists whose work you're going to use to create the machine that will then be used to replace those same artists we've just exploited. There's value in not worsening climate change through colossal power consumption for literal real-world gains, and in fact, much real-world strifes. If your end goal is truly to create genuine artificial intelligence which achieves personhood, how about you start by respecting human intelligence and personhood? But as I said before, their real goal is to make money. All of it. As much as they can while preventing others from doing the same. When your desired end is solely to make money, nothing else has value of any sort. Any action is justified so long as the number goes up. It's a simple calculation. So simple, even their glorified copying machine can compute it. There are more ethical frameworks with which to judge actions than just an ends-based utilitarian one. For ends aren't the only things with value. To solely consider ends, both in media and in real life, is the first fallacy of modern society. I hope I have shown this in this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Whoa, wait a minute there, buddy. Okay, stop playing around now. Which is it? Which theory is right? Utilitarianism? Deontology? Virtue ethics? How do I know what's right and what's wrong? How do I correctly approach the ethical dilemmas in my life? You can't just say, there's not just one theory, but 3 theories, then not tell us which theory is the right one. Which one will help me live my best life? You might think I've once again copped out. What is the right theory? How should you approach your life? Well, to tell you the truth, I think that our obsession with one singular theory to rule them all is the second fallacy of modern society. A fallacy that shows up in everything from physics to politics. Life is messy and complicated. If it was easy, we would have figured everything out by now. There is no one answer to give, but that, I'm afraid, is a topic for another day. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If this channel grows, then one day we will have the chance to discuss the second and even third fallacies of modern society. In the meantime, there's other great videos coming your way. And what did you think of the content of this video? Sound off in the comments below, but please remain respectful and kind to each other. Post your best arguments supported by your best examples. Let's have a healthy discussion in the comments section below. I hope you have a great rest to your day, and see you next time when we'll discuss